Look, it pains me to make this video. I expected to make a very nice tutorial slash showcase video, just like I did for MooOS and Batocera and the modified stock ROM for Knulli, but I couldn't. That was my intent, and it pains me for what I'm about to say, especially because these people were so nice to me. I hopped on their Discord and I asked a poop ton of questions, and they were more than happy to help me, but I just can't recommend this custom firmware, at least not yet. I grew older and my beard got whiter while trying to tinker and make it reach a workable state. I felt like in Dante's Inferno, and I'm not trying to dramatize. I got so crazy that I made a puppet hand trying to keep me company as I freaking tried to make it work. But I'm not gonna poop all over this custom firmware because I am convinced it's gonna be one of the best. I see that the building blocks are there. It's just that it needs more time in the oven until it becomes a good custom firmware. But anyway, for the sake of organizing this video a bit, because I'm gonna cover quite a few things, I'm gonna split it into chapters. I'm gonna start with the installation, the immediate problems that I encountered after I installed Knulli, the PPSSPP problems, the PortMaster problems, because I couldn't get games to work not even if I freaking begged it, and the problems that I encountered while trying to play on the TV via HDMI. And finally, I'm gonna wrap up with my conclusion over all of this. So, preferably, grab a snack or a drink or whatever suits your fancy. I don't care what you put inside your body, I'm not your freaking mother, but grab something, eat, and join me in this conversation, okay? We have a lot to talk about, and I want you here with me. And if you appreciate me going through literal tinkering hell, then I would really appreciate if you took the time to like and subscribe, because I'm a small channel and it really goes a long way, and I would personally be thankful. And if you want to support me more directly, then take your rightful place on my wall of fame along with these other fine people by becoming either a channel member or by joining my Patreon. Doesn't matter which way you choose to support me, you will still end up on this wall. But anyway, let's proceed on to the video. I'm gonna start with the moment right before I lost my innocence. The moment where I took out a brand new 64GB SD card and I installed Knulli on it. Installing it is as simple and average as it gets. You just take the image file off their GitHub, you open up Rufus, you flash that image file on an SD card, and you plop that SD card inside your Anbernic device. For context, Knulli currently supports the TrimUI Smart Pro, the Anbernic RG28XX, RG35XXSP, RG35XX H, RG35XX Plus, RG35XX 2024. Yes, it's even more hell for me to repeat all of these, but moving on. But I would argue that at least the H, because that's what I tested this on, shouldn't even be on this compatibility list. I am jaded by trying to make this work. Look how pretty it is, but there's a price that nobody should pay for prettiness alone. Isn't that right, Talking Hand?
Yes, it is, blood. Yes, it is. You're in hell right now, do you know that?
Fun fact, right after you install Knulli OS, you will realize that you will not have access to the freaking ROM's partition on the SD card you installed on unless you have Linux, or unless you use SMB for file transfers. But we're assuming that the average nerd wants to install this thing, and the average nerd doesn't want to go into advanced stuff and just has one of these suckers, and he will want to swap the SD card around in order to move his ROMs. Well, tough cookies, because the ROM's partition is actually formatted in ext4, and to translate this for the less nerdy among us, this is a Linux partition that Windows cannot read, and you can technically go around this by taking a USB stick and installing Ubuntu or any other Linux distro on it, or you can fire up the Windows subsystem for Linux, WSL, via Windows 11. But come on, this is a freaking joke. I bet that 95% of you would just swap the card around. Very few people use FTP or similar right from the get-go to transfer their ROMs. I am willing to die on this hill. But let's ignore this. Let's say that in order to circumvent this issue, you plop the second SD card with games, because you still need to put your games somewhere. And this is very important, because this was my user experience. I messed up when I introduced the second SD card, because the normal expected user experience is to not use a second SD card, at least not at the beginning. And I'm gonna touch on this a bit later. Finally, you get your games on this freaking thing and you manage to test some PSP. But fun fact, even if you put your games on the second SD card, they do not show by default. You have to go in the flipping emulation station settings to tell it where to look, because it doesn't know that out of the two possible locations where ROMs might be, maybe if it doesn't find ROMs in the first one, maybe it should search the other one. But it doesn't do this. You have to point it to the second SD card and then restart the system. But anyway, we push on forward. These are slight inconveniences at best. We restart this device. We finally see our games. We are happy. We think the torment is over. We laugh in Sisyphus's face, telling him, "You idiot, you keep pushing that rock up the hill. I'm done. I'm done. I'm happy. I get to enjoy this." But what a fool you are. What a fool you are to believe this, my dear nerd. No, because on the Anbernic RG35XX H, not all the buttons are mapped yet. That's why I said that this device shouldn't even be considered compatible. The sticks aren't mapped and the triggers weren't mapped either. I first encountered this on PPSSPP, but then I figured that the sticks aren't mapped anywhere. I tried MAME, no luck, and I tried various other places, no luck either. And let's be clear about the thing, this is not a minor oversight. Again, I love the people behind the project, and I know I'm appearing as harsh, but I would consider this a pre-alpha build at best. The buttons on the device are our gateway towards interacting with the software on that device. And when almost half the buttons don't work, then I'm sorry, but no, this is not acceptable. God bless this guy right here. Again, he told me that I need to manually map them inside emulation station. But let's say I was a noob. Let's say I was someone who's very new to all of this. How many times would I have been stuck up until this point? And while I'm on PPSSPP, I should show you another tiny inconvenience. PPSSPP's interface isn't even scaled properly. On such a tiny screen, you need to scale the freaking UI. It isn't complicated to do so. The stock OS does it, MuOS does it. I'm convinced it's literally just modifying a config file somewhere. This alone should have taken a few minutes at best. If I'm wrong and if it's more complicated, then mea culpa, I'm really sorry. But it's just one of the many places where I noticed a lack of polish. But anyway, at the end of the day, after all this tinkering, we would be able to play PSP, and we would be able to play most other consoles under this Knulli build. And that's my point. Given enough tinkering, if you have way more patience than me, or I assume many other people, you can make this, you can transform this into a beautifully functional custom firmware solution with a very beautiful UI. So if you have the energy to go through all of this, or if you're smarter than me and you only use one SD card, then you would actually be able to use this firmware. But I'm exclusively talking about my personal experience with it. Now that you have a heads up, you can probably go through all these steps in a way easier fashion. But anyway, coming to PortMaster now. I now try to include PortMaster whenever I review a custom firmware. I did it for MuOS, I'll do it for the TrimUI Smart Pro when I review Tomato OS. I'm all over PortMaster. PortMaster is honestly one of the awesomest things that we can do on such handhelds. But if you're an idiot like me, thinking that using two SD cards from the beginning wouldn't affect you, then I'm sorry, but you're gonna have a hard life just like I am. Because, fun fact, using a second SD card messed up how PortMaster was supposed to be installed. For context, a PortMaster install script should have appeared in the PortMaster menu. You, as a user, were supposed to click on it, PortMaster would install, and technically you would then have PortMaster, which sounds super easy. But if you have a second SD card, then you don't get that script. That script never appeared in the ports menu for me. So, because I'm a nerd, I went onto the PortMaster GitHub. I found a full PortMaster install script and I personally added it to the ports folder on my second SD card, because remember, I don't have access to the necessary partition on the first SD card because it's formatted in ext4. So my only option was the second SD card. So I plopped the script there, I restored the device. Lord and behold, the script wouldn't appear in the ports menu. So I went through OD File Explorer, which is a file explorer in the ports section that Knulli has, and I installed the script from there. And then PortMaster appeared in the ports menu, but it wouldn't run. And why wouldn't it run? Because up until this point I realized that I haven't connected this device to Wi-Fi. So then I go to the network settings and I try to connect it to Wi-Fi, right? Right? No! Because the torture will not end. There's still a lot more to go through. Apparently Wi-Fi doesn't work if your network is encrypted with WPA3, which is the latest encryption protocol that most routers have. You would have to downgrade your entire network's security to WPA2 in order for the internet to work on Knulli. Of course I didn't downrank my entire network's security, I just made a hotspot from my phone which was WPA2. And then it worked. But PortMaster, because that's why we needed the internet, still wouldn't work. It would still crash on boot. Probably because all of the testing that the Knulli guys did was with their script that they provided, in the case where you only started with one SD card and not with two of them. So unfortunately I couldn't test GTA, I couldn't test Doom 3, I couldn't test many other ports that I had in mind for this video. So PortMaster was a complete bust. But then, finally, at the end of the road, I was like, you know what, MuOS has PortMaster. But you know what MuOS does not have? MuOS doesn't have HDMI out. You can't play games on your flipping TV from your flipping Anbernic while you're on MuOS. And Knulli supposedly was able to do so. And to its credit, it kinda did. It didn't work on the first try. I had to restart the H in order to get a proper video feed on my TV, but the sound still wouldn't work. The sound would still come out of the tiny speakers from the Anbernic RG35XX H and not from my TV, which supposedly has a way more superior sound quality to it. So I sat there, felt like a flipping sucker, trying to play something on the big TV while hearing that teeny weeny sound from the handheld itself. But hey, at least it worked, so that's something, I guess. So yeah, that was my experience with it. It was one of the roughest, not one of the roughest, the actual roughest custom firmware user experience that I had so far. But that's the thing. I am optimistic about Knulli because Knulli seems to have a lot of the building blocks there. Knulli, provided it gets a lot more polished and a lot more development time, can actually be one of the best custom firmwares out there. It's just that it's not there yet. I think they released public images for these devices a bit way too early, or at least they did so for the H. I assume Knulli would work way better on the RG28XX, which doesn't have Wi-Fi and doesn't have the sticks. So those are two problems that are solved right from the get-go. And in time, I might give this custom firmware a second look. I'm gonna have the Anbernic RG35XXSP and the RG28XX in my hands very soon, and I'm gonna test it on those as well, and I'm gonna come with an update. But yeah, it's been rough. It's been so freaking rough. I feel like I non-ironically climbed the Everest mountain, and somehow I still had a tiny drop of will to live afterwards. This non-ironically gave me the same vibes that I had in 2007 when I used to play with Ubuntu for the first time, and I was knee-deep in troubleshooting forums because I kept running into problem after problem after problem. But just like how Ubuntu admittedly turned into a very polished distro so will this custom firmware turn into one hack of a very nice and polished custom firmware solution. We just need to give it more time, but currently it's not there yet. If you value your mental health, your sanity, I would advise against even trying it. Not yet, give it a couple of months. And to the guys on the Knulli Discord, I'm sorry if this isn't the video that you expected me to make, especially because I basically praised most custom firmwares in the past. But I need to be realistic here. You have a very good thing going. It just needs a lot more polish. And I'm eagerly expecting to see Knulli at a stage where you would be confident and happy to have me take a second look. But yeah, my dear nerds, this is it from my end. I'm a bit older than how I was from the last video. My eyes are a bit more similar to that of a broken man, but I keep pushing for you fine nerds, because I love you, like I always did. And if you're still here, just know that you are awesome. Consider subscribing. It would make me really, really happy. And I'm not just saying that. Also, consider becoming a supporter. I think your place might be on my wall if you watched this far. And until next time, my sweet dear nerd, I love you very much. Bye. You're beautiful today, by the way.